The bank teller slid the paper under the glass like it was nothing. Just another transaction. I looked down at the balance and felt my stomach drop through the floor. Negative. Not a little negative. 6 figures. For a second, I thought it was a glitch, some back-end error, a system hiccup that would fix itself if I blinked hard enough. I didn't blink. "Sir," the teller said gently, "do you want to dispute the charge?" Charge. Singular. I laughed. It came out dry. "There's one charge?" She turned the screen so I could see. Loan disbursement, commercial refinance, authorized. My name sat next to it in neat digital ink. Marcus Hale. I hadn't signed anything. I install HVACs, rooftops, roofed warehouses, schools. I work with tools, invoices, and calloused hands. I know every dollar that comes in and every dollar that leaves because if I don't, my guys don't get paid. I didn't sign this. I stared at the timestamp. 3 days ago, I was on a roof in Phoenix, in 110-degree heat, tightening a compressor mount, when someone emptied my life. I looked back at the teller. "That signature isn't mine," I said. And the second the words left my mouth, I knew exactly whose it was. My wife. And suddenly, the negative balance wasn't the worst part. The betrayal was. I drove home with both hands locked on the wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. Traffic blurred. Horns, lights, none of it felt real. All I could see was that signature floating in front of me like a stain I couldn't wipe off. Danielle's car was in the driveway. Of course it was. The house looked the same as it always did. Fresh mulch, porch light on, the stupid ceramic welcome sign she insisted on hanging every spring. Welcome. I walked inside and she called from the kitchen, cheerful. "Hey babe, you're early." Her voice hit me like static. She was standing at the stove in leggings and one of my old work shirts, stirring pasta like nothing in the world had shifted. I watched her for a full 5 seconds. She smiled, and I realized she had no idea I knew. That scared me more than the loan. "How was the bank?" she asked casually. My heart thudded once. She knew. That wasn't a guess. That was confirmation. I stepped into the kitchen slowly. "What did you sign in my name?" I asked. The spoon stopped mid-stir. Not dropped. Not shocked, paused. She turned, eyes already defensive. "It was paperwork," she said. Paperwork. Like it was nothing. Like my life was a form she filled out while I was gone. "How much?" I asked. She didn't answer. And the silence told me the number was worse than I imagined. The pasta burned while we stared at each other. Neither of us moved. The house smelled like smoke. And suddenly it didn't feel like my house anymore. She turned the burner off, like the conversation was an inconvenience. Then she wiped her hands on a towel and faced me. 240, she said. Just like that. No build-up. No apology. $240,000 dropped into the room like a body. I felt my ears ring. "You refinanced my business," I said slowly. "Our business," she corrected. I laughed. There was no humor in it. "You're not on the LLC. I'm your wife," she snapped. "It's the same thing." It wasn't. And she knew it. I stepped closer, close enough to see the tiny muscle twitch in her jaw. "What did you spend it on?" Her eyes flicked away. Bad sign. "Investments," she said, plural. "What investments?" She hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw the truth assemble itself. Not stocks, not property. People. Her sister's salon failed in 6 months. Her cousin's startup that never existed. Credit cards I didn't know about. Trips, gifts, loans that would never come back. She didn't invest. She distributed my money, my name, my risk. "You put my livelihood on the line," I said. "I saved this family," she fired back. "You work yourself to death and still think small. I made us bigger." Bigger. I looked around the kitchen. Same cabinets, same cracked tile, nothing bigger. Just debt hiding in the walls. "You didn't make us bigger," I said quietly. "You made us fragile." And for the first time since I walked in, she looked scared. I walked past her and went straight to the office. The filing cabinet was locked. It had never been locked before. That alone told me everything. I grabbed the screwdriver from the junk drawer and forced it open. The metal shrieked and the lock snapped. Papers spilled forward like they'd been waiting to escape. Danielle rushed in behind me. "Marcus, stop." I didn't. Folders, statements, credit lines. My name printed again and again like a signature stamped into concrete. I flipped one open. Personal loan, approved, another. Business line of credit, maxed, another. Equipment lien, my equipment, the truck, the tools, the lifts. Everything I owned had been turned into collateral without me knowing. I looked up at her. "How long?" She crossed her arms, cornered and angry. Months, she muttered. Months. I'd been waking up at 5 a.m., working 12-hour days, thinking I was building something stable while she hollowed it out from the inside. You forged my name, I said. She rolled her eyes. I signed for you. That's forgery. That's marriage, she snapped. No, it wasn't. Marriage was trust. This was an extraction. I stacked the papers into a pile with shaking hands. You didn't borrow money, I said quietly. You stole my future. The word future landed heavily, and for the first time she didn't argue. She just stared at the floor, because she knew it was true. I didn't yell. That's what she expected. I sat down in the chair across from her and let the silence work. Silence is heavier than screaming. It forces truth to sit in the room. She shifted her weight, crossed her arms, uncrossed them. The bravado was leaking out of her posture. You're overreacting, she said finally. Overreacting. $240,000. Forgery. Collateralized tools. My livelihood. And I was overreacting. I looked at her like I was looking at a stranger. Did you put the house on this? The question came out flat. No emotion. She froze. That half-second hesitation told me everything. My chest tightened. This house? I repeated. She didn't answer. Didn't have to. The mortgage papers were probably in one of those folders. My father's tools were still in the garage. The workbench he built with his own hands sat 10 feet from the wall she'd signed away. I stood slowly. The room felt tilted. You risked the house I buried my father in, I said. Her eyes flashed. I risked it so we wouldn't live small forever. There it was. She didn't see damage. She saw ambition. And she thought ambition justified theft. I realized then something simple and brutal. We weren't arguing about money. We were arguing about reality. And only one of us was living in it. I didn't sleep that night. Danielle slept fine. That was the part that stayed with me. The steady rhythm of her breathing while I lay there staring at the ceiling, watching numbers stack in my head like falling bricks. 240,000. House, truck, equipment. Every asset I owned had a shadow hanging over it now. At 4:12 a.m., I got out of bed and went to the kitchen. The house felt staged, too quiet, like a set after the actors left. I opened my laptop and pulled my credit report. The screen loaded, and I felt my stomach drop again. 3 accounts I didn't recognize. One opened last week, another 2 months ago. The balances weren't small. She hadn't just refinanced, she'd been layering debt quietly. Precision work. Like someone building a trap and making sure I didn't hear the clicks. I printed everything and sat at the table watching the pages stack. Danielle walked in around 6, hair messy, eyes half open. She stopped when she saw the papers. We didn't speak. We just stared at each other across the table. The sun was coming up behind her. The house looked warm and normal in that morning light. And I understood something that hit harder than the numbers. I wasn't married to a reckless spender. I was married to someone who believed my life was hers to gamble. And she didn't regret the bet. I called the bank from my truck before work. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The woman on the line sounded routine until she pulled the file. Then her voice changed. Sir, this loan is secured against your commercial assets. I closed my eyes. I didn't authorize it. Pause. Typing. Well, your signature is here. Email it. The PDF arrived before the call ended. I opened it. There was my name, my business, a clean digital signature. Perfect. Too perfect. I zoomed in. The curve on the M was wrong. I've signed my name 10,000 times. Muscle memory doesn't lie. That wasn't my hand. That's forged, I said quietly. The woman hesitated. If that's the case, sir, you need to file a fraud affidavit immediately. Fraud. The word landed heavier than felony ever could. Because fraud meant war. Not an argument. Not counseling. Not forgiveness. War. I looked at the timestamp again. Danielle signed it while I was in Phoenix installing rooftop units in heat that peeled paint. She emptied my future while I was building hers. The woman asked if I was still there. I am, I said, and I heard my own voice change. Calm. Cold. What's the first step? Because the second I said fraud out loud, the marriage was already over. The fraud affidavit took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to redraw the line between husband and victim. I sat in the truck staring at the confirmation email after I submitted it. My hands didn't shake. That scared me more than anger would have. Anger means attachment. Calm means separation. When I walked into the house that evening, Danielle was sitting at the island with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone like the morning never happened. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't answer my texts." "I was busy," I said. "With what?" I put the printed affidavit on the counter. She read the header. Her face drained. "You reported this?" I didn't answer. She looked up slowly. "You're filing fraud against me?" "You filed fraud against me first," I said. Her voice rose instantly. "I did that for us." "No," I said. "You did it because you thought you'd never get caught." The wine glass shook in her hand. "You're ruining everything." I leaned closer. "You already ruined it. I'm just documenting the damage." Silence hit the kitchen like pressure. She stared at the paper, then at me, and I watched the exact moment she realized this wasn't a fight she could talk her way out of. This was paperwork, and paperwork doesn't forgive. She followed me into the hallway, not crying, not apologizing, calculating. "You can withdraw it," she said. "The affidavit," like she was negotiating a refund. I kept walking. She grabbed my arm, hard. "You don't understand what happens if those processes." I turned slowly. "I understand perfectly." Her grip tightened. "No, you don't. This isn't a mistake report. This is criminal." There it was. Not regret, fear of consequence. "You should have thought about that," I said, her face twisted. "You'd send your wife to prison?" I looked at her hand on my sleeve. It felt like a stranger touching me. "I'd protect my life," I said quietly. "You're the one who gambled yours." She released me as I burned her. "You're cruel," she whispered. I laughed. Cruel. The word echoed in my head. She stole my identity, my business, my house equity, and I was cruel for stopping her. That's when it clicked. This wasn't denial, this was entitlement. She didn't think she did anything wrong. She thought she owned me, my labor, my credit, my future. I walked into the garage and sat on the workbench my father built. The tools smelled like oil and steel. Solid. Real. Everything Danielle touched turned abstract. Numbers, loans, leverage. But this was mine, and I wasn't losing it to protect her ego. The lawyer didn't react when I finished talking. That's how I knew it was bad. He'd heard worse, and I'd just joined the list. He flipped through the documents slowly, neat stacks forming under his hands. Forgery, unauthorized lending, asset leverage. Each page was another brick in a wall I didn't know my own wife was building. "You're financially married to a crime scene," he said finally. The words didn't shock me, they clarified something I already felt. "Can I fix it?" I asked. "Yes," he said, "but not gently." He explained it clearly. If I protected her, I drowned. If I reported her, I survived. There was no middle, no compromise, no therapy version of this, just consequence. My phone buzzed. "Danielle," I silenced it without looking. The lawyer slid a paper across the desk. "Emergency asset separation. Sign this today," he said. "Today decides whether you own your life tomorrow." My hand hovered. I thought about the house, the shop, the men who trusted me to make payroll. I thought about my father teaching me how to sign my name on my first toolbox, like it meant something. It did, and she forged it. I signed. The pen felt heavier than metal. The lawyer nodded once. "Good," he said. "Now we move faster than she does." I served her the papers at breakfast. No speech, no build-up, just an envelope sliding across the counter next to her coffee. Danielle looked annoyed at first. Then she read the header. Her face emptied. "What is this?" she whispered. "Protection," I said. She stood so fast the chair screeched. "You're divorcing me over money?" I almost smiled. "This isn't money," I said. "This is identity theft." Her voice cracked upward. "I did that for us. You did it without me." She tore the envelope open, hands shaking now. Not rage, panic. "You're reporting this? Marcus, this is criminal." "Yes," her eyes snapped to mine. "You'd send me to prison?" I held her stare. "You already walked yourself there." Silence spread between us. For a second, she looked small, human. Then it hardened into something colder. "If I go down," she said quietly, "you go down with me." There it was, no apology, just a threat. I stood and grabbed my keys. "You already tried," I said. "Didn't work." I walked out while she was still holding the papers like they were written in another language. The morning air felt different, lighter, because the decision was made, and decisions once made don't beg. The bank froze the accounts by noon. Every card was declined. Every transfer is locked. The machine she'd been feeding went silent. Danielle called me 47 times. I counted. First voicemail, anger. Second, disbelief. By the 10th, she was bargaining. "I'll fix it. Just undo the report." Undo the report, like it was a typo. The lawyer called instead. She tried to move money, he said calmly. Too late, everything's sealed. I sat in the truck outside a job site and let the relief settle in slowly. Not victory, containment. She's escalating, he added. Expect pressure. He was right. When I got home, the office looked like a storm hit it. Drawers open, files everywhere. Danielle was digging through papers like she could outrun reality. She spun when she saw me. You ruined everything. I stepped inside and closed the door. No, I said quietly. I stopped you. She laughed sharp and broken. You think you're safe? Your credit is already destroyed. I can rebuild credit, I said. You can't rebuild felony records. Her mouth snapped shut. The fight drained out of her shoulders, and for the first time, she looked afraid. Not of losing me, of losing control. The house went quiet after that, not peaceful and quiet, aftermath quiet. Danielle stopped yelling, stopped pacing. She sat at the kitchen table with her phone in both hands like it was the last object tethering her to control. I could hear her texting, fast, sharp taps, calling reinforcements, family, friends, anyone who'd listen. By dinner, the calls started coming to me. Her sister first. How could you do this to her? I leaned against the garage wall, grease still on my hands from work. She forged my name. Silence. Then, you're exaggerating. I hung up. Next call, her mother. You're destroying this family. No. Danielle did that the moment she signed my identity away. I didn't argue, didn't explain. I just let them talk until their voices ran out of air. Every call sounded the same. Not one person asked what she did. Only, why wouldn't I forgive it? That told me everything about the ecosystem she came from. Accountability wasn't a value. Avoidance was. When I walked back inside, Danielle looked up at me. You turned them against me, she said quietly. I shook my head. No, I replied. I stopped protecting you. And that was the moment she understood something irreversible. The shield was gone, and the world could see her. She didn't cry this time. That's what made it worse. I came downstairs and she was sitting at the table with a stack of printed statements lined up like evidence in a courtroom. My statements, her handwriting in the margins, notes, plans, interest calculations. She'd been running projections, not panicking, planning. I can fix this, she said calmly. That calm hit harder than screaming ever could. You don't fix fraud with spreadsheets, I replied. She slid one page toward me. If we consolidate and leverage the equity. I pushed it back without looking. You're still trying to gamble, I said. Her jaw tightened. This is what growth looks like. No, I said. This is what addiction looks like. Silence, her eyes sharpened. You're small, she whispered. You always were. That was the real confession. Not the loans, not the signatures, contempt. She didn't respect my life. She tolerated it while she tried to outgrow it. And she used my identity as a ladder. I stood up slowly. You didn't bankrupt us, I said. You revealed yourself. That landed. Her shoulders stiffened, because she knew I was right. The money was damaged, but the truth was fatal. I changed the locks that afternoon, not out of spite, out of containment. The locksmith didn't ask questions. He just drilled, replaced, and tested. Clean work, final work. Danielle stood on the porch watching. You're locking me out of my own house? She said. I handed her a copy of the separation order. It's not your house, I replied. It's collateral you almost burned. Her lips trembled. You're erasing me. No, I said calmly. I'm removing risk. That word hit her harder than any insult. Risk. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was a liability. The locksmith handed me the new keys. The metal felt heavier than it should, like responsibility condensed into shape. Danielle looked at the door, then at me. You'll regret this, she whispered. I shook my head. I already regret trusting you. She flinched as I struck her. Not because it was cruel, because it was accurate. She walked to her car without another word. The engine started, tires on gravel, silence after. I stood there holding the keys, listening to the house breathe. For the first time in months, it sounded stable. And stability, I realized, wasn't peace. It was the absence of sabotage. The first official notice hit my inbox 3 days later. Fraud investigation opened. Case number assigned. Real. Irreversible. I stared at the email longer than I should have. Not because I doubted it, because I understood what it meant. There was no going back to a version of life where this was a marital argument. This was legal now. Structured. Documented. Danielle texted once that morning. Just 3 words. Call me. Please. I didn't. I forwarded the message to my lawyer and went to work. The guys at the shop didn't know anything was wrong. Compressors still need replacing. Units still need to be calibrated. Air didn't stop moving because my marriage collapsed. Something was grounding about that. Machines don't lie. They fail loudly, predictably. Humans fail quietly, strategically. Around noon, my lawyer called. She retained counsel, he said. Of course she did. She's claiming shared marital authority over the transactions. I laughed. Forgery isn't authority. No, he agreed. But she's trying to blur the line. That was Danielle. She didn't fight with force. She fought with fog, confusion, delay, narrative. But the paper trail was clean. And paper doesn't care about narrative. Paper cares about signatures. And hers were everywhere. The sheriff showed up at the shop. Not lights, not sirens. Just a cruiser rolling in quietly like a punctuation mark. The guys stopped working. Wrenches paused mid-air. Everyone watched. The deputy stepped out holding a folder. Marcus Hale? I walked over. That's me. He handed me a document. Service notice. Danielle was suing, claiming emotional abandonment, financial coercion, and marital asset theft. I read it once. Then again. The words didn't sting, they clarified. She wasn't trying to survive this. She was trying to rewrite it. I looked up at the deputy. Thank you, I said calmly. He nodded and left. The crew stared. I folded the paper and slid it into my pocket. Back to work, I said. And they did. Because life doesn't stop for lawsuits. But inside something shifted. This wasn't defense anymore. This was a counterattack. She wasn't ashamed. She was adapting, weaponizing victimhood, trying to drag me into a version of the story where I was the villain. I called my lawyer before the engine on the cruiser faded. She's escalating, I said. He didn't sound surprised. Good, he replied. People who escalate make mistakes. And Danielle had a history of signing her mistakes in ink. The mistake came faster than my lawyer expected. Danielle tried to move money again. Different bank, different account, same pattern. The fraud team flagged it instantly. Attempted transfer using frozen credentials. They called me directly. Sir, the investigator said, voice clipped and professional, we have confirmation she accessed restricted funds after notification. I sat in the truck outside a supply warehouse, engine off. What does that mean? I asked. It strengthens criminal intent. Not civil. Criminal. There it was. The line she kept pretending didn't exist, crossed in permanent ink. My lawyer called 10 minutes later. She just buried her own defense, he said. That's obstruction. I exhaled slowly. Danielle wasn't fighting smart anymore. She was drowning in grabbing anything. Desperate people don't calculate, they thrash, and thrashing leaves marks. That night she showed up at the house, pounding on the door, not angry, terrified. Marcus, please. Her voice cracked through the wood. I didn't open it. I stood in the hallway and listened. I'll fix it. I swear I'll fix it. There was nothing left to fix, only consequences to walk through. Her fists slowed, then stopped. The porch went quiet. And I realized something cold and clean. The woman outside wasn't my wife anymore. She was the aftermath. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there. I was on a rooftop adjusting ductwork when my lawyer called. They picked her up, he said. No drama in his voice, just confirmation. Charges? I asked. Forgery, fraud, attempted financial obstruction. I tightened the wrench and stared at the skyline. Somewhere in the city, Danielle was in the back of a cruiser, realizing that paperwork doesn't argue. It concludes. I didn't feel victory, I felt gravity. The weight of final decisions is landing. By noon, the news had already circulated through her family. My phone lit up with calls I didn't answer. Messages stacked in waves. How could you let this happen? She's your wife? Fix it. The same people who'd told me to forgive her now wanted me to rescue her. From the consequences, she signed herself in. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. You don't negotiate with reality. You endure it. When I got home, the house felt quiet in a way it hadn't since before the loans. No tension in the walls, no hidden math humming under the floor, just stillness. And in that stillness, I understood something simple. This wasn't revenge. This was a correction. And correction hurts the person who resisted it the longest. Her lawyer tried to call a truce. That's what they called it, a truce. Like this was a war we both chose instead of a collapse she engineered. We met in a sterile office that smelled like copier toner and stale coffee. Danielle looked smaller in person, not physically, structurally. Like the architecture of her confidence had been dismantled piece by piece. She didn't look at me. Her lawyer did all the talking. She's willing to settle, he said. Restitution plan. Reduced charges. Civil reconciliation. Civil reconciliation, I almost admired the phrasing. It made theft sound like a paperwork dispute. My lawyer slid the counteroffer across the table. Full admission, full financial disclosure, no shared assets, no debt transferred to me. Danielle's head snapped up. That leaves me with nothing, she said. I met her eyes for the first time. You already took everything, I replied. This is just what's left. Silence settled, heavy, final. She looked like she wanted to argue, cry, rage, but there was nothing left to weaponize. The documents were airtight, the timeline is clean, every move she made was recorded. Her lawyer leaned back. She'll sign, he said quietly. And I realized something then. She wasn't fighting for the marriage. She was fighting the math. And math doesn't care who you love. The settlement papers arrived by courier, thick envelope. Heavy stock. Final language. I signed them at the kitchen counter, where Danielle once planned my financial collapse with neat handwriting and optimism. The irony wasn't lost on me. My lawyer stayed on the phone while I flipped the pages. Every clause carved distance. Debt assigned to her. Assets protected. Business insulated. Marriage dissolved in legal vocabulary so clean it almost felt polite. You're free after this, he said. Free. The word landed strangely. Not triumphant. Not joyful. Accurate. I signed the last page and slid the pen away. Somewhere across the city, Danielle was signing the same document from the other side of the story. 2 signatures. 1 ending. The courier came back an hour later to collect it. When the door shut behind him, the house felt different. Not empty, unburdened. Like a structure that stopped holding weight it never should have carried. I walked into the garage and ran my hand over the workbench. Solid wood. Straight lines. No hidden clauses. And I realized something simple. I didn't win. I survived. And survival, when done cleanly, looks a lot like victory. The court date lasted 14 minutes. That's how long it took to legally dismantle a marriage that took 7 years to build. The judge didn't look at us like a couple. He looked at us like a file. Danielle stood across the room in a gray blazer that didn't fit her shoulders. She didn't cry. She didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead, as if she kept her eyes fixed long enough that she could outweigh the outcome. The judge read the terms. Fraud acknowledged. Debt assigned. Assets separated. Marriage dissolved. His gavel didn't slam. It tapped. Soft. Final. Danielle's lawyer leaned toward her and whispered something. Her mouth tightened. That was the first visible crack. Not sorrow? Not regret? Recognition. This was real. No more negotiation. No more narrative. Just a consequence stamped into record. I signed the exit sheet with the same pen I used to sign invoices. Muscle memory carried the motion. I didn't rush it. I let the signature land clean. When I turned to leave, Danielle finally looked at me. There was no hatred in her face. No apology either. Just exhaustion. The kind that comes when the story you told yourself collapses under its own weight. I nodded once. Not forgiveness. Not cruelty. Acknowledgement. Then I walked out of the courthouse into sunlight that felt sharper than usual. Like the world had edges again. The shop felt different after the court date. Not because anything changed on paper, that was already done, but because the noise in my head finally shut off. For months, every job carried a shadow. Every invoice felt temporary. Every dollar felt borrowed. That morning I opened the doors and the air smelled like metal and coolant and coffee from the break room. Normal. The guys were already arguing about a compressor order, like they always did. Someone laughed too loudly. A drill whined in the back. Life was running at full volume. I stood there for a second and just listened. Stability has a sound. It's boring, predictable, beautiful. My foreman walked over. You good, boss? I nodded. Yeah, I said, I'm good. And for the first time in a long time, that wasn't performance. It was a fact. The bank called around noon. Case closed. Assets secured. Credit recovery path approved. Language clean, efficient, almost kind. I hung up and stared at the office window. The city looked the same. But I didn't. I wasn't carrying hidden math anymore. No secret countdown ticking under my ribs. Just work. Just breathe. Just ground. And I realized something quietly profound. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't celebrate. It simply arrives. I saw her one last time at the grocery store. No warning. No buildup. I turned the corner by the frozen aisle, and there she was, staring at a shelf like it personally offended her. Danielle looked thinner. Not unhealthy, stripped, like life sanded her down to essentials. She saw me. We both stopped. No cinematic music, no shouting, just two people standing in fluorescent light with a cart between them. She spoke first. "I'm working now," she said. Not defensive, not proud, informational. I nodded. "That's good." Silence. She looked at my hands like she used to when we were married, like she was checking for signs of anger. There weren't any. "I didn't think you'd go all the way," she said. I met her eyes. "I didn't think you'd either," I replied. That landed, not as an insult, as truth. She swallowed. "I never meant to destroy you." "I know," I said. "You meant to control the outcome." Her shoulders dropped. That was the closest thing to an apology she had. We stood there another second. Then she pushed her cart past me. No hug, no forgiveness speech, just motion. And I realized closure doesn't sound like victory. It sounds like footsteps walking away. The house is quiet now in a way I used to be afraid of. Not empty, not lonely, stable. I sit at the kitchen table some mornings before work and drink coffee without rushing. No hidden bills, no silent dread humming under the floorboards. Just light coming through the window and the sound of the city waking up. I rebuilt my credit. The shop is stronger than it was before. The truck's paid down. Every tool in the garage is still mine. And that matters more than I ever understood when I thought I was protecting a marriage instead of protecting my life. People ask if I hate her. I don't. Hate is heavy. I already carried enough weight. What I feel is clarity. Danielle didn't ruin me. She revealed the line I should have drawn years earlier, and once I drew it, everything stabilized. Some endings don't explode, they click into place. Clean, permanent, necessary. If you're listening to this and you're protecting someone at the cost of your own foundation, financial, emotional, personal, understand something. Loyalty isn't martyrdom, and love isn't permission to erase yourself. Sometimes survival looks like cruelty to the people who benefited from your silence, but survival is still survival, and it's worth choosing every time. If this story hit you, don't scroll past it in silence. Like the video, so more people stuck in quiet financial or emotional traps actually see it. Comment your thoughts. Would you have handled it differently or drawn the line sooner? Subscribe for more real stories about boundaries, survival, and the moments that change everything. Because sometimes the strongest revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding.